My name is Eleanor. I am 80 years old, and I have carried a secret for more than 60 years. A secret so heavy that some nights it still wakes me before dawn.
Not one person in my family knows, not my daughters, not my grandchildren, not even my son, especially not my son. Because the truth is this: the man who has called me mother his entire life was never truly mine. He came to me on a winter night, wrapped in a thin blanket, placed into my arms by a husband who barely looked me in the eyes. And from that moment on, I chose to love him, not because I had to, but because something in my chest simply opened up and refused to close. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to 1965. I was 19 years old, and back then, girls like me didn't make many decisions about their own lives. My father believed there were only two futures for a young woman: marry early or become a shame to the family. He used to say, "Pretty girls don't need education, they need good husbands." And according to him, I was a very pretty girl. In those days, that wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. It meant people watched you. It meant your reputation could disappear overnight. So when Robert came into the picture, everything moved quickly. He was 27, 8 years older than me. He worked in construction. He had steady money. My father liked his handshake and his serious face. I remember the dinner they had together. My father laughed louder than usual, poured Robert extra drinks, and before the evening was over, I realized something unsettling. They were deciding my future as if I weren't sitting at the same table. 3 months later, we were married. Looking back now, I don't believe Robert wanted that marriage any more than I did. But in those days, life simply pushed people into places they never chose. He was never cruel to me, never raised his voice, never struck me. But from the very first night of our marriage, there was a distance between us, a wall I could feel even in the dark. He was polite, respectful, quiet, but not once did he tell me he loved me. Not once did he reach for my hand. In the beginning, I told myself small stories to explain the silence. Perhaps he's shy. Perhaps he's tired. Perhaps marriage simply takes time. But about 6 months after the wedding, I began to notice something else. Robert was often gone late at night, and sometimes when he came home, he smelled faintly of perfume that was not mine. I was young, but I was not foolish. I knew there was another woman. But in those days, wives did not ask too many questions, so I said nothing, and life continued.
Until one night in winter. It was cold enough that the windows had frozen patterns of ice along the edges. Robert came home much later than usual. I heard the front door open slowly.
carefully, as if he were trying not to make a sound. When I walked into the hallway, I stopped. Robert was standing there, holding a baby, a newborn baby wrapped in a thin blanket. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The child made a soft sound, and Robert looked at me and said only 4 words. "This is my son." I could not understand what I was seeing. He told me then, without looking at me, the truth he had hidden since before our wedding. Before we were married, he had been in love with another woman. Her name was Margaret. Their families had not approved, and so my marriage to Robert had been arranged quickly, almost as a solution. But Robert had never truly ended things with her. They had continued seeing each other, and now she had given birth to his child. I felt many things at once: shock, confusion, a strange, hollow sadness. But not, and I have thought about this many times since, not anger, because somewhere deep inside I had always known. There had always been someone else in Robert's heart. Then I asked the question that changed my life. Where is the baby's mother? Robert looked down at the child for a long moment, and then he said the words that I still hear even now, 60 years later. She died this morning. Margaret had died during childbirth. Her family did not want the scandal, an unmarried daughter, a secret pregnancy. They wanted the child to disappear quietly, and Robert, with nowhere else to go, had come home, to me. He placed the baby gently into my arms, and in that moment, something inside me broke open. The baby was so small, so warm. He opened his eyes for just a second, and I felt something I had never felt before in my life. Not the love from stories or songs, something deeper, something that came from the center of my chest and simply took over. Robert said we would tell everyone the baby was ours. No one would question it. We had been married nearly a year. People would assume the child came a little early, and that is exactly what happened. The next morning, neighbors brought flowers. My father shook Robert's hand proudly. My mother kissed the baby's forehead and cried. Everyone believed the story. Everyone except the 2 people who knew the truth. From that night forward, I raised that child as my own. I fed him, rocked him to sleep, held him when he cried. I watched him take his first steps across the living room floor. I loved him completely. But there was always a shadow living inside that love, because I knew what no one else did. That boy was not legally mine. If Robert ever decided to leave, to start a new life with someone else, he could take that child with him, and I would have no right to stop him. I was never afraid of losing Robert. I had accepted long ago that his heart belonged somewhere else. But the thought of losing my son, the child I had held since his first breath, the child I had chosen every single day, that fear lived inside me like a stone. It sat with me at the dinner table. It followed me through birthdays and school mornings and every ordinary Tuesday. I smiled, I laughed, I was mother. And underneath all of it, the fear never entirely left. Years passed. We eventually had 2 daughters together, and from the outside, we looked like a perfectly ordinary family. 3 children, a house, Sunday dinners. But inside that house, there were 2 people living separate lives in the same rooms. Robert never spoke of Margaret again, not once in 40 years of marriage. It was as if that chapter of his life had simply been sealed shut. Then one afternoon, almost 20 years after that winter night, there was a knock at my front door. A woman I had never seen before. She introduced herself carefully. She was Margaret's sister. She said she had been searching for a long time. She only wanted to know one thing. Was the child safe? Was he well? Was he loved? We sat together for nearly an hour, and during that conversation, she told me something I had never known. Margaret had known. She had known that Robert was already married to me. She had known about our home, our life, our arrangement. And in the weeks before she gave birth, when she understood she might not survive, she had made a decision. She asked her family not to interfere. She believed her child would have a better life in a stable home. She chose, in her final days, to trust that a woman she had never met would love her son. When the woman left that afternoon, I sat alone in the kitchen for a very long time, looking at a photograph of my son on the wall, thinking about Margaret, about what it must have taken for her to make that choice, about how she died, believing her boy would be cared for, and how, without ever having met her, I had kept her wish. The fear I had carried for 20 years quietly began to lift. Robert passed away many years ago. We were married for more than 40 years. Not a marriage of passion, not a cruel one either. Simply 2 people living side by side through a long and complicated life. My son is now a grown man with children of his own. He calls me every Sunday. He still calls me Mom in the way that stops time for just a second. Last month, I held my first great-granddaughter in these arms. She wrapped her tiny fingers around mine, the same way he did on that winter night more than 60 years ago. And I felt the full weight of all those years pressing gently on my chest. No one knows, not my daughters, not my grandchildren, not the great-granddaughter now sleeping in the next room, and not my son. To him, I am simply his mother. I am the woman who held him first, the woman who was there for every moment that mattered. And I have made my peace with that. Some truths, when spoken, change everything. Others only break what time has already made whole. So I have decided this secret, the one I have held quietly for more than 60 years, will probably leave this world with me. If you were standing where I am standing right now, 80 years old, a great-granddaughter sleeping in the next room, would you tell the truth? Would you sit your son down and say, "There is something I have never told you"? Or would you let the past stay quiet and carry the secret gently to the end?
Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And sometimes your words help more than you know.